those in the waiting room, I mean, not those in the waiting room, those that are on the Zoom call, please ensure that you are logged in, and people in the boardroom, please make sure that you are logged in so the electronic vote can happen. Good morning, Ms. McCrae. On mute.
Good morning. I'm
Good
here.
morning.
Go. All right. Good morning. Welcome to our called board meeting. Today is February 7th. Yes. 9 a.m. in the morning. The purpose of this special call meeting of the Muscogee County Board of Education shall be to allow the school board to consider adopting a new election map for board member districts. And then I will turn it over to Mr. Ellington, who has been very dutifully paying attention and attending all of the meetings on behalf of the board, as it is that Hall Booth Smith is the law firm that represents the Board of Education. So in his role, he has been continuing as it has been traditionally done with representation for the Muscogee County School Board in the effort when we participated in the local commission that was sanctioned by the city council. However, that was the city council's commission, and they have been gracious enough to allow us to have a representative there to speak and advocate on our behalf. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ellington.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. To try to put it into context why we're here this morning having a called meeting, as you just alluded to, Ms. Hughley Green, we had been attending the redistricting commission meetings with the anticipation that once again we could share election district boundary maps with the city council as we have for the past 10 years. And you all actually met in December and approved what was known as Scenario J that had been recommended by the redistricting commission that they recommended to city council. And that map then went up to Atlanta as it's required to do under the new law, where the Congressional Reapportionment and Redistricting Office reviews all maps to certify that they're ready to go to the full General Assembly for its consideration and approval. So, as you may have heard, the map that we sent up for the city, they actually had some technical adjustments that they wanted to make to that, and City Council has been working through that aspect of it. But with respect to our board, the staff in the Legislative Counsel's office, which is basically the legal staff for the Georgia General Assembly, and the officials that are in charge of the certifications of the maps, said, you know, we understand that y'all have been using these maps that share the same lines that the City Council does for at least the past 10 years, and that even before that, your maps did not include that portion of the county that sits within the base. However, with fresh eyes and new consideration, we really think that the school district maps, at least, should include that population. So there was a period of time where I was talking to them about why they'd come to that conclusion, making sure they had all of the history and the facts. And what happened last week is it became apparent to me in my discussions with them that the only map that they were going to get behind and approve for us, for the school district, was a map that included that portion of the county that's on the base. The other thing that happened is that it was also clear to me that the map that legislative reapportionment and redistricting office prepared for us and sent to us, which we can put up on the screen so folks can see it.
Good morning.
Good morning. That there was really very little room to adjust the boundaries. And that's on this map that you can now see in front of you. So just by way of explanation, the sort of the purple lines, the outlines, those are the boundaries of the election districts that you've had for the past 10 years. The colored zones now reflect what the new map boundaries will be. So if you look, for example, at District 1, you can see that District 1 now moves further west. Right. And you can see District 3 there at the bottom in green has now pushed further south. That is to add the population that's down there on the base into districts, primarily District 7 and 3. So, as I was saying, this map now really does not provide much in the way of opportunity to say, well, okay, can we consider adjusting this boundary line, or can we consider adjusting that boundary line? And that's because they've used their criteria in order to draft this map, and that doesn't really leave much in the way of options for changes. Their requirements include, or their priorities include, starting from and keeping the existing boundaries as much as possible, keeping voter precincts intact where they can, using well-defined features as boundaries, keeping currently elected and sitting officials in the district from which they were elected. They don't want to draw a line and unilaterally in Atlanta just draw somebody out of their district and cause them to lose a seat. And then to balance the population, what they do is they take the census results from 2020 and they come up with an average. I guess it's just the total population divided here by 8. That comes out to some 25,500 or so people should be in each district. And they draw these lines so that they basically have, you know, within a few hundred people, that number in each one. And that is how they get to this map. So the other thing that happened this past week is it became first apparent that the timeline for having a map approved in the General Assembly was on a fast track. Basically, if it's not introduced in Atlanta this week, maybe even this morning, then it may well be too late to have the new map approved and in place for the upcoming May election. The other thing that happened is that our local legislative delegation graciously said, we want to be able to help you move forward with this map in Atlanta as expeditiously as possible. But in order for us to help you, you need to help us by going ahead and approving this map. And so given that we have to have the base included, given that there's very little room to, you know, get into a discussion about moving a boundary line, you know, several streets in one way or another, it seemed to me and to our board chair that we ought to come before you today and give you the opportunity to adopt this map, ask questions that you may have, certainly, but to keep this ball rolling with the hope that we can have the General Assembly in Atlanta take it from here and have this map in place for May. Yes, sir.
District 6 is drawn in yellow. District 6 being normally all 11, yellow, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Now it goes all the way down showing the Fort Benning. Is that all District 6 now? Or where the dark line, I know that's probably the old line, what the dark line was, but now it's showing yellow, and I assume that's showing it's absorbing all that?
It is. And my understanding, Mr. Cantrell,
Yeah,
is
you
that
do.
that space that's new for your district, which is that, big
Is that all
swath.
Fort, is that Fort Benning, Georgia?
It's Fort Benning, and my understanding is that there is almost no population in that area. That's just woods and training ground, and that's why, I don't remember if they have indicated to me how many, if any, people down on the base are actually coming into your district. But I do know that that big swath of area is uninhabited. So,
No man's land.
right.
Now, is there any Fort Benning population in our districts that's real population up in there?
So apparently the census indicated that there are some 7,200 people who live on Fort Benning that are also within Muscogee County.
And where are they
That
at,
is
Greg?
primarily, though, located in the area that is now covered by Districts 7 and 3, is my understanding from talking to the folks at the state.
At the very bottom right.
Yes, the light purple and the green. That would be Miss Williams' district and Miss Jackson's district.
So all that's new right there,
On the bottom.
on the very bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, I
the
see what you're-
southernmost portion of that. Those are the neighborhoods, apparently.
If you see the line there, where it says Fort Benning, you can see where the reservation is and how the color lines are now down in the reservation.
See, in that yellow where it says Wolf Creek, there's no population in that whole area.
I'm not saying that there's none. I don't know.
Okay.
I guess, to be clear, I know that for that big tract of land that's a lot of the southern portion of your district, that's uninhabited woods and training ground. But there may very well be, Mr. Cantrell, down there adjacent to District 3 and
That is
and
housing
next to
down there.
District 4, there may be some Fort Benning population that is being added into your District
Is that,
6.
it looks like somebody lives in number 2, District 2, at the bottom right down there, very bottom right. Well, bottom to the right, if you go upward, for that Jamestown, it goes into a 2-7 or a 2.
Oh, I see, yes.
Are you following me, folks? Okay, it changed colors. It looked like it had 3 colors on that one little certain patch right there, but it don't, when you zoom in right there.
So where in the yellow where it says Sand Hill, that is base housing. That's new, it's actually fairly new construction, that's base housing.
And what district is green?
Green is 3,
Ms. Jackson.
Ms. Jackson, sorry.
So
Hey, Pat, it's Kathy. Can I ask a question?
1 second, Kathy. We got Kia, then you.
And the black lines is the old district? Am I assuming that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all the big black lines was. So what's cutting up in the Midland by the Chautauqua Road area? What, is that going into Beaver Run? Can you see if that's the Beaver Run population? Or is it Chautauqua Road? And then Flat Rock, where you got Flat Rock up there, or the top of it. I was just trying to see what section of Macon Road that's cutting into 6. Okay, there's Blackman Road right there. Bill Hurd Parkway. Okay, that's not.
That may be the Midland Commons area, Mr. Cantrell,
that's-
that sort of peak.
Does it show where your schools are?
It does, but he's going to address that on down the road. And also, there's a link too in your email if you want to get the rest of your questions and just stretch it out. So you can see all of the streets actually. And that will help better to be able to look at it on your device. You can actually see street names.
And what is the ballpark population they're trying to get to the number for each district?
I believe it's about 25,500 and some
Correct.
change.
Correct.
So is 6 the most change?
No.
In terms of just sheer size.
Now, yeah, I'm not
yes.
talking about.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about compared to the old and our demos right there.
Right.
You know, there's probably some demos out there in the woods. Heard there's a family of Sasquatch living out there.
They'll be hard to campaign to.
Yeah,
Any other questions, Mark?
I think that probably, does it say, it don't say how much people are being moved out of that area, does it? Or how much that area that is, okay, well, just real quick up there at the very top, it looks like a mountain. You see where there's a brown W, it looks like, and then you got the cap.
At the top of District 5.
Uh-huh.
And then a little bit over there by Highlands. Okay, going down, yep. And go up a little bit. I see Cooper Branch. I don't know if that's a subdivision or not. Billings Road, okay, I know exactly where that is. Yeah, that's probably Chautauqua Road.
Yeah, you really, I would encourage each of us to click on your device and you can actually see street names, because these are just like major boundary thoroughfares, and then the street names may actually help you hone in, and then as Greg get further into his presentation, we'll put the school locations up there, and that may help you additionally. Can we go on to Kia, Mark?
Yeah, we can go, and I'm trying to
And
find
we'll
it
come
on
back.
this. I just
All
can't
right,
find it.
Kia.
Kia Chambers, citywide representative. I just have a couple of questions for you, Greg. Just for a point of clarity, the commission that was formed for the city, they voted on a particular map. Is this the same map that they have voted and approved?
No. So they approved what was known as Scenario J.
Okay,
This map that is in front of you now is the map that was prepared by the state Office of Congressional Reapportionment and Redistricting, which is the office that advises the General Assembly and is the office that has to give certification to maps before they go to the General Assembly. It's basically, so for example, when y'all met in December and approved the map J, and when City Council did the same and sent it up for review, that office that reviews the map for compliance, certification purposes, that's the office that prepared this map for us.
okay. So historically, our maps have been the same as the city. Is that correct?
I think that for the past 10 years. So we go through this cycle every
10
time the
years.
census comes out. And so when we went through this 10 years ago, we got in lockstep with the city and adopted maps that were the same map, basically, is the best way
Okay.
to say it.
Is there what was their rationale for feeling like the school board lines should be different and should include Fort Benning? That's first part of my next question. And then also, have these citizens been paying taxes into Muscogee County all this time and not been included in the voting?
Let me start with the second question first.
Okay.
The answer to that is no. They live on the federal military base and housing that's owned by federal government for the most part. They do not pay Muscogee County ad valorem property taxes on their residences. So, you know, I assume they pay car tags and things like that, but they don't pay ad valorem taxes on their homes because they don't own them. They're living on the base. So no. With respect to the first part of your question, the city charter, when it was adopted, actually says in it that the city does not provide any services to people who live in that area, that is, within the county, but on the base. They basically, that's the way it's written. They don't pick up trash and recycling and they don't provide services down there. And therefore, I think that's one of the reasons that the folks in Atlanta are, I guess, content to let that be as it is.
Okay.
With respect to us, it really is not that anything has changed, right? So when this board transitioned from being appointed by the grand juries up until the early 90s, 1992, 93, and then we'd switched to election districts, the very first set of election districts that were proposed and went into effect had boundaries that stopped at the base, didn't include the base. Those maps went through, you know, several cycles of review and approval at the state level, and we all used to be under Section 5 of the Federal Voting Rights Act, and so the federal Office of Voting Rights in the Department of Justice used to review everybody's map, and they reviewed ours as well, and they were fine with it. I think it comes down to this: new people with fresh eyes are looking at it, and they're saying, you know, this percentage of people down there in the base, while we know it's highly transient, they come and go, they're here for short periods, they move a lot. While they're here, they have the opportunity to send their children to school here, and some do, of course. And if they live in the county and they establish residence in the county and they can send their kids to school, they think that those people ought to be included. And, you know, I mean, who's to argue with that logic?
So that brings me to a follow-up question. So the additional constituents that we're adding to the map won't be paying property taxes into the tax base in which the school district operates. And then my other question would be about representation. As the citywide representative, I want to make sure I'm able to represent the additional constituents that will be added to that. So will we then have to assign those, will we have to change our assignments for schools? So you're including a base of people. If they can vote in the school district elections, then how do we represent them if they're going to schools on Fort Benning instead of going to schools in Muscogee County?
I think the best way to look at that is to look at somebody who, you know, lives in, say, District 2, right? Nowhere close to the base. They don't have kids that go to any school. Maybe they never had kids that went to any school, but they're a resident of Muscogee County and can cast a vote. The other thing is that
the difference, Greg, between that is if they're in District 2, they're paying the property tax.
well,
I think,
that's true.
let me add to that. I think what the point is about them having a right to vote. Not about what school their children go to. It's not about any of that. It's making sure that every citizen has access to voting for representation. And so I don't want us to get sidetracked.
So they haven't,
Slippery slope.
So that brings a very important point. So the people that live in this area, they have not been voting at all.
Not for school board.
boards. Not for school board seats. They vote for federal,
And state.
congressional elections
In state.
and state.
Counselor, mayor.
They do
They-
not vote for
they-
council, mayor.
In Muscogee County, what we're looking at, or is this Fort Benning, Georgia?
Just the Muscogee County portion
So
that,
this whole portion is Muscogee County.
Correct.
that you're looking at the map, right?
They are, that part of the base is in Muscogee County. A small portion is in Chattahoochee County. And so
But we will be providing services. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, because, again, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around the clarity. So if city council said, we don't include this in our maps because we don't provide services, then I'm trying to see how our services would change if we are providing, if we are adding that additional amount to the maps. So then, do we then include them in our maps for buses and things of that nature?
So, yeah.
And I
there-
mean, and if we don't, then why not? Because we're adding this population of people.
Yeah, so there's a separate state law that applies to people who live on the military bases in Georgia, whether it's here in Columbus, Augusta, or Macon, anywhere else. And that statute says that the students who live there have the right to go to any school within the county
And they
that
do.
adjoins, right?
And they
Okay,
do.
so that particular, okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so,
And let me just drop this next.
okay, go ahead.
We don't provide transportation. That's also in the state law. That it's,
Okay,
they
so
have,
we
if they
wouldn't
want
have
to,
to provide
if they want to
transportation.
come to a school, it's, it's
So
incumbent on the family to
elementary,
get them.
even though they have 7 or 8 elementary schools on Fort Benning, they could elect to say, I want my child to go to Matthews, or, South Columbus,
If
or
there's
whatever.
room available,
And they,
they have
hold
to
on
follow
one
the
second,
same rules.
let me get
If
some
there's
clarity
space
from
available at Matthews, they have
attorney.
to follow the same
So-
rules that we follow.
If they decided that they wanted to send their children to school at a different school, they could elect to do that kindergarten through.
That's right.
There's no stipulation.
If
It is,
there's
it is
space
subject to,
available.
it is
sorry, I
subject to
can't hear.
space, is having
Service.
available
Okay.
space at the school that they're interested in looking at.
And do we currently have any students doing that now?
Oh,
Not
yeah.
for the high school, but for,
Oh, yes.
We've been here about it.
Yes,
okay,
yes,
do you know how many?
Not offhand, but we have them at all over.
all over.
Matthews.
They've been doing that.
Gentian,
Oh,
Okay. Okay, so that makes perfect sense to me, Greg. The difference between the school district and the city. If
Oh, we have the
they
same
can't elect to say,
gonna have the
well, I
same
want to use the trash service for Columbus.
right.
But if they can elect to send their child here, to me, in my mind, that makes more sense to why the maps would be different.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was having a hard time clarifying why we would be different than the city all of a sudden.
Right.
And then, it brings up a lot of other questions about, are we gonna have access to be on Fort Benning and things of that nature?
We're gonna have to work through that.
Yeah.
I don't have answers
Because
at the
if they're
ready for that.
constituents, then you're gonna wanna
Go and
be
talk
able to
them.
campaign, talk to them about what's going on,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So then that would be my next concern.
Yeah.
But you've clarified a lot for me just with that state law, being different for school districts and not for the city. So I have to come to an understanding on my own.
It's
and
taken-
make sure that I've asked the clarifying questions.
It's
So-
taken me a while to work through all of these things.
Absolutely. All right, thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it.
all right, thank you. And I do, before, Ms. Williams, you're next, but I just want to say that, Fort Benning is no different from any other military installation. Ours has a lot of training, and so the citizens that were counted on the day of the census may not be there, okay? Because it's a training facility and they're in and out. So just wanted to make that clarification. Ms. Williams and then Ms. Buckner.
So, actually, Kia asked one of my questions, and that is about access. I mean, that's a closed base. I used to live in Battle Park, and you weren't, even back when it was an open base, candidates were not allowed to campaign on Fort Benning, and that is considered Fort Benning. I mean, you have to go through a gate to get onto Custer Road. You have to register, and you have to declare a purpose, and now it's so close you have to have an escort. So I'm a little concerned about access to voters. But I also, Pat, you said something about this is Muscogee County, although some of it is Chattahoochee County. I want to know what part of it is Chattahoochee County. And then my last question is for District 3 and District 7, we're picking up the majority, the vast majority of the actual residents of the people. Mark, you have a lot of territory to cover, but I think a lot of it's hunting too. So my question is, we spent a lot of time, 10 years ago, we've spent a lot of times, the commission spent a lot of time this year ensuring racial equity, making sure the districts were balanced. Now you've just thrown 7,000 more people largely into 2 districts. How does that impact the demographics that we're supposed to be paying such close attention to? So that and access and what part of this is actually Chattahoochee County are my 3 questions.
So in the,
Do you have the page that has the demographics? It's also on that. It's also in the
Oh,
link.
no, I don't. All
The
that
link.
was on the board docs is the resolution. I pulled up the link that Greg sent for the actual colored maps that you have on the screen, but I haven't found any demographics.
so for clarification, there should not be any, my understanding is there is not any portion of Chattahoochee County that's included within these maps. I think Ms. Green was just saying that the base also includes portions of Chattahoochee County, but that's not in play for us here this morning with respect to these maps in the election district.
Okay, all right, because I've always been under the impression that the lion's share of Chattahoochee County was actually Fort Benning.
That may well be, but that's not being included in these maps. They would be, voting in Chattahoochee County, presumably.
And that's why we see so much of Fort Benning not included.
I think that's right. So with respect to the question about the demographics of each district, so, one of the responsibilities of the office in Atlanta, the Congressional Office of Reapportionment and Redistricting, is to look at every map submitted and make sure that it retains the demographic characteristics that have been in place, that have been approved by the federal government, that have been approved in the past. There are some variances. If you look at this proposed map with respect to the prior map, it doesn't change the whether a district is majority African American or white. It doesn't change that, but and it has very little change in most of them. I will say in District 3, it went from being this is ballpark numbers, so I'm not giving you exact, but it went from being approximately 80% African American, the last 10-year map, to being about 65% African American under this proposal. That was the biggest swing that I saw when I looked at that. The other variances are within 2 or 3 percentage points for the most part. Now, but I think the overriding point to make on that issue is the fact that the state office that's responsible for overseeing and making sure that maps don't dramatically change the demographics of the district is the very office that prepared and sent us this map.
If I may add about access, oftentimes the garrison commander asks superintendents to have roundtable meetings at the, on the installation. And we receive a gate pass that we have to renew periodically or whatever, but I would assume it'd be some similar process for gaining access to the installation. It's like a card that we receive that would give us.
Okay, well, Dr. Lewis, with all due respect, getting a card to go to a round table is one thing. Getting permission to knock on doors on a closed base is quite another.
Well, what I would suspect there is they'll probably have a central place, but I don't know. I would think they would probably have a central place for candidates to come on the base or on the installation to talk with anybody who would be interested. But again, that's to be worked out. I have no idea what the process will be.
Well, I mean, you're adding 7,000 members to largely to 2 districts. I think that's a fairly important question. Unless, and if anybody's looked at this, I guess the next question could be, how many of them are registered voters? I mean, is this of such transient nature that there are no registered voters and therefore the access would not be necessary? But if there's, even 50% of them registered in Muscogee County, are we going to be able to get their names and their addresses? Are we going to be able to direct solicit? That's a different animal on post. And that's on post.
I think that's the reality, that is transient, and currently it's like 1,200 registered voters, right?
It
And they are
actually-
part of the voter record when you secure the voting file. They are
Okay.
part, all registered voters for Muscogee County is included in the voter file.
Okay, well, that answers that, at least for direct mail. We might not be able to knock on doors, but we may not necessarily need to based on percentages. All right, I think that answers all my 3 questions.
If I can speak for a minute, it's Laurie McCray. I know I talked to Greg on Saturday, bless his heart, at length about a lot of this. And what it really came back to with me is all other districts in Georgia that have military bases contingent to it are already doing this. And so it's kind of hard for us to make a case as to why not. And as Kathy just mentioned, when you actually look at the percentage of registered voters out of that number, it's a very small number. So I think in actuality, it will play out differently than it looks when you have to include everybody. And I know that's something Greg tried to have counted instead, was just the number of registered voters. But again, they said that every other place in the state does it this way. So that's it for me.
Am I on yet? Okay, I want to address the question about if military people were paying ad valorem taxes or something in regard to a school district. I want to note that the military families are disrupted within the United States and abroad. The federal government realizes the impact that makes on states when students come to each state. So the government supplements districts, and at the beginning of each year, all students, for military students, have to complete an impact aid form, and that's a form supplied for the federal government, and they supplement counties and school districts because they recognize that there is an impact on when they bring students from state to different states. So we have this, and the government has been supplementing states all the time, even before a map was done. They have always supplemented states. And we, Muscogee County, we're glad for the service that these people, as these people are disrupted and are transient, we appreciate their service.
Thank you. Mr. Chambers, you got an additional question?
That may have answered my question.
The impact aid
supplement.
forms?
Right, absolutely, because I was going to ask about tuition But okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, correct. Thank you, Ms. Buckner. That is the whole purpose of that very vigilant effort that the schools make to get those impact aid forms completed and submitted back. Ms. Tillery.
And,
Oh,
oh, and I was just going to say that change is hard no matter which way, we're going, but I am grateful that we are including Fort Benning. It's going to be difficult to understand how to get to those voters and get to those families, but they provide a lot for our community. They provide a lot for our country. And I grew up near a military base, and, we're grateful for all the support that they give us. And it will be challenging, and we'll have to figure out new ways to do things, but it's going to be worth the effort.
that's right, every voter. Mr. Cantrell?
Yes, if you have 1,200 voters in it's a large district, but very small district, and it's going into mainly number 7 and number 3, it appears like what I'm looking at, because it sounds like it's dead man property, a lot of that Randall Creek area. Would that skew the numbers on the other ones if you add 400 extra and 500, but now you've got to pull away from their regular voters that they've had for 10, 20 years now that was in this district, because you're still trying to keep your numbers at 27,000 apiece. And if 2 areas pick up 90% of these people, that means they'll lose a lot of their regular registered voters that's in that district. Am I correct on saying that?
So it does have a ripple effect in the other districts when you add this new population to any of them.
Right.
And I think the map in front of you is probably the best demonstrative aid to show you that each of the districts is changing some to make this adjustment. The numbers are still going to be roughly equivalent in each district. So everybody's district is changing somewhat. What's new for districts 7, 3, and to some extent your district is that there's just a new population center that hasn't been included before. But everybody's numbers have to change in order to keep the balance throughout the entire county.
Do you have a number count, Greg? Not at this time. That shows how many people will go into these extra areas from Fort Benning, because a lot of these people might be Fort Benning all, everything. I know my sister-in-law, she's a teacher at Fort Benning Middle School, and in fact, they got 7 elementary schools, I think, at Fort Benning.
2, I think, isn't it?
Is it 2?
It's not a 7.
Huh?
They don't have 7.
They don't have 7? Okay.
No.
She teaches at one of them, whatever they were.
They have 2 on post. They have 7 or 8 on Fort Benning. But they have 2 on main post. They have E.B. White and the other one, but those are both on main post. Those don't take into consideration other neighborhoods that they have out at Sand Hill and et cetera.
And also, Mr. Cantrell, that's for all districts. So what is being counted is the population, not registered voters. And so each district has a balanced number between 25 and 26,000 residents, and they're not voters. And so even though we may have 25,000 people in our districts, they're not all registered voters. And so the census is counting people, populations, not just the voters. And so that, what you're saying, how it's going to skew it, applies to all of the districts.
Still, if people do all Fort Benning and make their living at Fort Benning and even send their kids there, but now they're in our area, and you take one area where you had 300 voters at Beaver Run section, and now they came from a Fort Benning section that probably, maybe not even vote inside of our election, but they're included. But you've lost 300 in the city limits right there that definitely live and breathe and everything about life is Columbus, Georgia. But I understand what you're saying by far. It just, that's why I was wondering if 2 districts are getting, 1,200 extra people, or 7,000 extra people is what you were saying, it sounded like.
No, it's the reason that we really don't have much in the way of room to negotiate moving the lines on the map that you see in front of you is that the state office has already balanced each of the districts to that population number, that target population number, with very minimal variance between every district. So they've hit that target that they were looking for.
I'm just asking questions.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Well, I'll be willing to make a motion that we approve.
Please. All right, motion by Ms. Williams, second by Ms. Tillery. We're ready to vote electronically.
Let me get back over there now. Hold on. You're gonna have to give me a minute because I gotta get back to board docs now.
Okay. Yes, sir. Hit your, sorry.
This new map puts Columbus and our school district in the same exact districts. So if you had Councilman 1, it's going to be the
No.
same as School Board 1.
No,
No,
they're different
We're now
again.
going to have two separate maps.
okay, so we're changing back what was 10 years ago.
That's correct.
Okay.
City council will have its map and we'll have a different map.
All right, you should be ready to vote now.
I voted.
Ms. Chambers.
We were trying to achieve that, but we got to the end stage of that game and realized that the folks at the state had a different consideration that they thought took priority over that consideration. Yes, sir.
Ms. Chambers.
So you said really pretty much, like before we had choices, like choices of which maps. And now within a week or so, we've been given this map and we have to vote and we can't change the map, is what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
What's different? What's different while we're voting? What's different is the reapportionment office before handled primarily congressional and state districts, and the local districts were done by commissions of sorts. All right, so this time they're adding on the responsibility that, and they're figuring out, there's a lot of different local maps that they're having to look at. They're adding on the responsibility of local maps.
So what's the difference, Greg? Do you have a map that what Columbus is going to go by, what we're going to go by?
Sure, we can put that up as soon as we get this vote. We'll go back to that, to the screen.
Ask your question one more time.
The districts at Columbus, Georgia's districts, and then the school board districts lay on where you see how much
Did it
change
come up?
compared to what we had.
You mentioned once before.
I cannot hear if you don't have microphones on.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Go
well,
ahead,
let's
Mark.
complete this vote. Let's complete this vote so we can put the map back up, and
I-
then your questions may make sense. Can we go ahead and complete this vote so it don't
Well, I
time out?
guess my question, I would need my question.
But I can't hear the question.
Go ahead, Mark.
We're not
you
gonna
don't
be
have
able to see the
microphones
map
on. Like,
until
Mark, I
we
don't
get
know.
this vote
I thought
finished.
about-
I apologize, Kathy.
Have you voted?
No, I thought we was going to answer our questions before we voted.
Are you gonna restart it?
Yeah, it's still open. We're just waiting on Chambers and Cantrell.
What I was saying, because Kathy could not hear it, we have a map that's going to show all of Columbus, Georgia districts.
Yes.
For our city councilmen, and then all of the school board districts to see how close they lay out to each other.
Yes.
And also, I've been told that actually the school board does not have to go by what was submitted, that we could change other things. Is this correct, or am I wrong on that?
With respect to the maps,
Yes, sir.
I really do not think that that's an option that you have. Based on
Okay.
my conversations with the folks who prepared this map, who are the same folks who have to approve the map before it goes before the state legislature. They took all of the factors that they think they are required to follow to generate this map, and if you start making a change in one place, it has a ripple effect throughout the entire county. And I've asked that question of her, Mr. Cantrell, and it was clear to me that that just really wasn't realistic to try to do at this point.
But that was brought up at one of their meetings, if I remember. I went to one over there at
That's no longer on the table, the
We
commission.
used to be able to do that, Bart. I know what he's talking about.
Yeah, the
That's what
commission
he's
is no longer,
Gotcha.
the state of Georgia has a redistricting, a reapportionment office, and that's who approves it, and that's who drew it.
And we used
I'm
to-
not against any of this. I'm just having questions.
Right.
So are we back in the situation where somebody could literally have to go to one precinct to vote for city council and another to vote for school board?
No, their precincts will
Okay.
be assigned to them based on their address, just like it is now. None of that will change
But
for
that's
citizens.
not, okay, you misunderstood my question. Are we going to again be in a situation where somebody could have an address where they're represented by District 3 school board and District 7 city council?
Exactly, that's correct. That's what we're going back to.
We are back in that?
Yes.
Wow.
They won't have to go to two different precincts, but they will
Right.
have two different, their representations will not be aligned for school board and city council
but they-
So
necessarily.
we just have to pray for our poll workers.
Correct. Well, no, because your assignment is your assignment. Your ballot will be your ballot. When you go to the polls, you'll have a ballot, and who you're eligible to vote for is gonna be on your ballot.
Right.
Okay.
Are we still voting? Has everyone voted?
No, ma'am. We're still waiting on Chambers and Mr. Cantrell.
No, to vote. They're. All right, that passes unanimously. Any other questions, concerns for the good of the order? You want to see the maps now, or you're all done with the maps?
I
Hearing
wouldn't
none?
mind if, excuse me, I'm sorry. On my page, it was kind of hard to distinguish some of these and especially in Midtown, what it was and what it is. Can I get a clean map of what District 7 will be along with the demographics and not what it was and what it's changing to? Because some of those colors combined look like other colors.
What you'll need to do is uncheck current map.
Okay.
Just check state recommendation and check school board member. And then you can stretch it with your fingers and you'll be able to see it
I
down
would like
to
to
the
have the demographics.
name of the streets. And I'll, Mr. Ellington, you'll send out the demographics. Thank you so very much. Hearing none, you have a question? I thought you said your question was answered. I'm sorry.
Okay, not every question. I actually have lots of questions. I won't ask them here today. But hearing pretty much that we didn't have a clear choice if we wanted to get this approved and get it approved pretty quickly because they are meeting in the next 2 minutes. But there are lots of questions, Greg, still, because we don't know about access of Fort Benning. We don't know how this will really play out. And I think that if you can bring those answers back to us in a more clarified version, just for the record, I have concerns with call meetings when we don't have time to really vet things and think through it and ask questions, and we still may come to the same conclusion, but it makes it difficult when things are called, you gotta do it right now. So if you can, the more information you can get for us and the more clarification on access, what our responsibilities will be as far as representation and things of that nature, I would appreciate it.
Be glad to. I also just want to say that the folks in Atlanta have been very gracious with their time in working through this issue. Once they raised the concern about whether they thought the folks on Fort Benning should be included or not, answering my questions, listening to the points I made about the history on how we got here and the transient nature of a lot of that population, and they took all of that into account, and I'm really thankful for that. And now that we are at this juncture, they also have been very gracious in getting the stuff ready so that it can go forward in Atlanta as expeditiously as possible. And our local delegation has been very gracious with its time and their assistance, and I'm thankful to them as well.
I just want to highlight what you're saying, because that's very important. I hope everybody was paying attention. It's a hurry-up situation because, unfortunately, that's how politics work. And that's what's going on at the state capitol because they're in session. It's a hurry-up. But don't be mistaken for one moment that our interest has not been well represented. And all of the hard, tough questions have not been asked. And the fact of the matter is, you still ain't gonna like the answer. Because we want to do what we've always done. So you're not gonna like the answer. But I wanna thank you, Mr. Ellington, because you have been consistently and fervently working back and forth. So it seems like a hurry up and wait and last minute, but it's not a last minute. It absolutely is not a last minute. This has been going on. I know we started 2 years ago trying to make sure that when commission gets in place, assuming that it was going to be done like it's always been done, the city council will appoint a commission and we will have input on where we want to go. So let me be very clear. It's a hurry up and wait because of the climate and the circumstances under the new changes. But Mr. Ellington has been working very diligently in gathering the information, asking the question, and defending all of these questions and frustrations that we're feeling. He's already been doing it. He's already been conveying it. And he has clarity from our local delegation, from the Office of Redistricting, as well as Legislative Council. And so the work has been put into place for weeks. But now we're all feeling, and I share your frustration. I don't want anybody to be misunderstand what I'm saying. It feels like a hurry up and wait. But the fact of the matter is, I wanted to share that background and highlight how eloquently Mr. Ellington just stated those facts, just to make sure that it's clear that this has not been a last minute thing. It's been an ongoing process. And again, I thank you for representing us.
I have my mic open. Ms. Green, am I open?
Yes, ma'am.
I also want to thank Mr. Ellison for all of his hard work.
Ellington.
And apparently, I don't know if I'm the only, I don't know whether you sent an email to everybody, but I do know when you found when this situation started where we had to make this vote, and that was a change, and we had to because of the state, you did send, I don't know whether you sent it to everybody, but you sent it to me.
It went to everybody.
If there were any questions that we wanted. All over the weekend, I sent you several questions, and I asked for specific things regarding District 4. Within that time, over the weekend, you have sent me back 2 or 3 maps. You have sent me the demographics of not only my district, but all of the other districts, because you asked if I needed questions at that time, which I did ask the questions, and you did supply that information to me. So I want to thank you personally for the hard work that you've done, and I know it's been done because you sent it to me. And I noticed that some of I was trying to forward it to you, Kathy, the demographics on my phone.
The demographics went out in an earlier email. We'll just resend it so it'll be back on the top of everybody's email.
Thank you. I know, like, as Kathy was, Ms. Green was saying the hard work that you've done. I just wanted to echo that, and thank you personally for the information that you sent me.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Ms. Chambers.
I won't sound like a broken record, but that's why I have my mic on as well. I want to thank you for answering all of my questions prior to today. and then definitely answering my questions today and agreeing to get more answers for us in the future. I do think that that's part of our job, to ask good questions. It's part of our job to make sure that we understand changes and that we get our questions answered prior to taking a vote and not just take it lightly. So I thank you for your patience. And I thank you for answering all my questions, and I'm sure I'll have more in the future. Thank you so much.
Well, we have some of the same questions. I mean, we do. And that's the next step in this, journey, is to answer the questions that you've raised, and we'll do it. But I appreciate all of y'all taking the time and giving this due consideration.
And the chairman of our delegation, if it makes anybody feel any better, said, welcome to their world.
I have a question.
Mr. Cantrell?
Greg, I appreciate everything you did. I saw you from that first board meeting, and you've been, on top of it. The committee that was appointed from the city's part, did they come up with the thing, or was this done out of the state from the high? Did it go to the high level, and is that where the final thing, did anything they do? I know it had some progress and some good ideas, but did they accept what they had submitted, or was that all changed from the state level?
Some of both, Mr. Cantrell. So that scenario J that City Council and you all looked at in December, the redistricting office had some changes that came back for City Council to consider. They're in the process of doing that, and I think, there may be, for example, I think the airport and Midland Commons had been moved from the scenario J map when the state looked at it. I think the state ended up agreeing that the airport could move back to the old district. There aren't any people there. And at this point, there aren't any people in the Midland Commons area, too. That's under development. So I think they made that change, but the city council's being asked to accept changes that the state made on their map as well.
I felt like, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I think we had a motion for adjournment, did we? We did not. All right, motion by Ms. Chambers, second by Ms. Buckner. All in favor, hand raised. We are adjourned. Y'all have a good week.